Hi everyone! Today we are going to make a coffee table like this, using bark pine needles and pine cones. In fact, there will be two tables with different metal bases, so I poured two molds, two separate times. They are slightly different, but mainly in the base design. The table consists of a tabletop and a metal base. The tabletop is made from epoxy resin. Epoxy resin has to be poured into some kind of mold. In general, ready-made molds are available on the market and you can buy them, but we decided to make one ourselves and show how it is done. So we will make a round silicone mold, then pour epoxy resin into it, and in the end we will get the tabletop. To make a silicone mold, first we need to make a mold for that mold. We decided to make it from 30mm plywood. We are making this simple jig to cut a clean circle. We attach the router to a piece of plywood and use it to cut around in a circle. Without overcomplicating things, we make a center hole and fix everything simply onto a drill bit. And then we start cutting. At first we decided to cut to a depth of about 15mm. We started cutting too deep. The router bit gets stuck, the plywood burns, and the cut becomes very slow and very inaccurate. Ideally, you should cut about 5mm per pass. Not try to do it faster. Slowly 5mm at a time. This way the router bit stays in good condition, the cut is cleaner, and in the end the whole process is actually faster. Like this, circle by circle, gradually increasing the depth of the router bit, we cut a groove in this 30mm plywood. We do not cut all the way through, so the mold can be filled, but nothing will leak out. Besides the area where the wall of our mold will be poured, we also need to make a limit for the top surface so the silicone does not spread out. So we simply cut a clean circle. Here we cut all the way through the plywood through our circle to get a neat round blank. In the end, we got this clean, even disc. Now we need to attach an outer wall to this disc so we get a proper mold for pouring the silicone. I decided to make this wall from a thin galvanized metal sheet, because it bends very well and makes it easy to form a rim around the circle. almost 213 millimeters. Our sheet is not that long, it is a little shorter, so we will have to cut it from 2 pieces. And here is an interesting little tip for quickly marking a line. Using this square, we place the marker into a special notch and the line comes out exactly 60 millimeters from the edge. This makes the marking quite fast. Cut it, and then also cut the missing extra piece. To make the metal easier to work with, we remove all the burrs and sand them down. We mark everything out. We clean our lines, mark the places where the screws will go, and then start fastening the strip to the wall with self-tapping screws. We press it with clamps. First, it holds much better, and second, the strip does not lift upwards this way. If we hold it only by hand, it is quite difficult, and the strip rises above the tabletop. Then the edge becomes uneven, and in the end, you never know if the ends will meet properly or not. We sand the surface so that the mold is as smooth as possible. It is enough to start with 120 grit sandpaper and then go over it with 320 grit. That is more than enough. This is 30 millimeters plywood, and we did not cut through about 1 centimeter probably. At this point, it becomes clear that 20 millimeters will not be enough for the thickness of the tabletop. So we decided to cut one more circle from the same 30 millimeters plywood. Just a simple circle that will match the previous one. This way, our thickness will be a little over 50 millimeters. For a coffee table like this, the tabletop thickness should be around 45 to 50 millimeters. The sanding work we did on the previous circle was basically unnecessary, but now we sand this circle properly. We centered it and glued it in place just with ordinary PVA glue. It will hold perfectly. Oh, actually, this is not PVA glue. It is probably polyurethane. Yes, this is polyurethane adhesive. But the difference is not critical here. Both PVA and polyurethane hold wood very well. The only difference is that polyurethane adhesive has to be pressed much harder, otherwise it starts to lift the parts while it cures, and gaps can appear. Polyurethane adhesive must be left under weight overnight for at least about 12 hours. Full curing will take around 24 hours. We decided not to struggle with weights and tightened it this way instead. If you are using polyurethane adhesive, make sure to press it very firmly. Now we calculate how much silicone we will need, and then we will start pouring it. The silicone is two-component, base plus hardener. We carefully measure everything on the scales. mixed it, and now we pour it in like from a bucket. It seemed to us that the bottom could be a little thicker, so we add some tape, raise the edge slightly, and pour in a bit more silicone. This should make the structure a little stronger, so we add a little extra silicone there. The next day we remove the tape, take off the metal strip, and try to pull our silicone mold out of the wooden mold. Because the silicone went inside the plywood groove, it is quite difficult to take it out. The silicone has stuck to the plywood, not permanently of course, but still it is holding on. We were afraid that we might simply tear the mold, so we decided to mill down this disc. We need to mill away the thickness that we had left to stop the silicone from leaking down along the wall. In other words, we need to remove the top layer of plywood until we see the silicone edge. We mill it down with 2 routers. Here we reach exactly this depth, the point where the silicone edge of our silicone mold appears. We remove the excess plywood, and then we will try to knock it out this way. We broke it, removed the upper rim, and now everything is much easier. The mold separates much more easily, and now we only need to pull out the inner circle. Also pay attention, everything we wrote with a pencil on the plywood has completely transferred onto the silicone, and this mold is still alive. We still use it for different things, and it still has our markings on it. We continue working on the mold, trimming off everything unnecessary because plywood is still plywood. It is not perfect. So we refine it. The better we finish the mold now, the less work we will have to do later on the epoxy. We wipe the mold clean, and now we will pour the first base layer. This is regular epoxy resin with a medium curing time. The resin is mixed from component A and component B. There are slow resins, which take a long time to cure, but they release bubbles better, and you can pour thicker layers with them. There are medium resins with medium thickness and medium viscosity, and there are fast resins for very thin pours. We are using a medium resin. If we pour a layer around lunchtime, by lunchtime the next day it has definitely cured enough for us to pour the next layer. Here we mix component A and component B. After mixing in one bucket, we always pour the resin into a second bucket and mix it again. This is done so that no unmixed material remains. When we mixed it in the first bucket, some poorly mixed resin could have stayed on the walls. After pouring it into another bucket, this problem disappears. And now we start pouring. This layer will become the top of the table, so right now the table is lying upside down. It is the top transparent base layer, where we will later place all our natural components. It is not a very large or thick layer. We remove the bubbles with a torch, cover it from dust so nothing falls inside, and leave it like this for 24 hours. Now we collect the natural material. We take bark, pine needles, and pine cones. We found this curved metal form, but the edges are not welded. They are just bent. So we seal them with silicone so the resin does not leak out, and we smooth the silicone with our fingers. We mixed a little more resin, and now we will coat all the bark properly with resin in advance and let it dry a little. Why do we do this? The thing is, bark contains air bubbles and they will come out. If we put raw bark directly into the pour, the whole resin layer will be full of bubbles. So we pre-coat the bark with resin and let it dry. This way there will be much fewer bubbles, or maybe none at all. And now we go to collect more material. Because the material is still raw, if we simply pour resin over it, it may start to rot inside the casting or release bubbles. So we treat it with varnish, thoroughly and for quite a long time. Here the bark has already been coated with resin, so we start separating the pieces, coat them once more, and after that begin laying them into our mold. We covered the pine needles and pine cones with varnish. Probably 5 or 6 layers, no less. We were coating them for about 2 days. The bark was also treated, and now we carefully arrange everything and prepare to pour the second layer. Again, we mix the resin in 2 buckets, one after another, to make sure there are no unmixed parts. Now we will pour a small layer to lock the composition in place, so later it does not spread out or move apart. Just a thin layer, which will secure the whole arrangement. The table will have a revealing depth effect, where the bark and pine needles should appear as if they are coming from inside the depth. That is why the very bottom layer, which is currently the top layer for us, will be completely black. The intermediate layers, 3, 4, maybe 5 layers, we will make gradually darker and darker. Right now we add just a little black pigment, so the resin becomes slightly grey. The next layers will be darker, then darker again, and darker again. This will create a sense of depth and make our composition show through better. We pour the next layer, now darker, and do not forget to remove the air bubbles. At this stage, we are no longer using a torch. Air bubbles can be removed with a torch, a heat gun, or isopropyl alcohol. But since we already have natural plant material inside, a torch would burn it, so now we use a heat gun instead. We do not have any isopropyl alcohol. New day, new layer, and notice that this one is even darker. Again, we go over it carefully with the heat gun and remove all the bubbles. The main thing here is not to rush. We pour carefully, layer by layer, taking our time. The more layers we have, the better the depth effect will be. And each time we cover it so that no dust lands on the surface, and leave every layer for about 24 hours. So at this point I think we had 2 transparent layers, and this is already the 4th dark layer if I remember correctly. We mix it very thoroughly, and this layer is already the final one. It is fully black now, nothing can be seen through it. So now we can remove the bubbles with a torch. If the pine needles get slightly burned, it is not a problem anymore. Alright, the layer has dried, and now we start removing everything unnecessary. We tear off, clean up, and trim everything that will not be part of the final piece. And after removing all the excess, we pour the deepest black layer possible. This will become the very bottom of the tabletop. At this stage, we can remove the bubbles quite spokojno with a gas torch. And now, after a week, the most interesting day has finally arrived. We have no idea how the pour looks from the other side. Maybe there are a lot of bubbles, maybe something went wrong, maybe something floated up. Epoxy heats up while it cures, so it may have affected our plants in some way. And with heat, they can change color. So this moment is very exciting. We take it out of the mold and see what we got, and how the casting turned out. There are some small bubbles from the silicone mold, but luckily we had the first base layer, where we later placed everything. It was not very thick, and all the silicone bubbles went into that layer. After that, they did not affect the rest of the casting in any way, so we can simply mill off this layer and remove the unwanted bubbles. And that is exactly what we do. We assembled this simple jig from metal angles and carefully milled the surface. And this is the backside. So we carefully remove the excess edge and lightly sand it, leveling our casting. We sanded the backside, and now we move on to processing the edge. Since our original mold was made from plywood, the silicone mold did not come out perfectly even. And because of that, the edge of the casting is not perfectly even either. The simple option would be to trim the edge and then sand it. But we decided to make a more interesting edge. With a Dremel, we carefully carve out these small cavities, which will later be filled with resin. You will see the effect. I think it will look quite interesting. In general, we could have simply sanded it, because epoxy resin sands quite well, then coated it. And we would have had a neat, smooth, beautiful edge. But we decided to make life a little harder for ourselves and do it differently. We wash everything thoroughly with a brush, removing the epoxy dust and everything we carved out. Everything is cleaned, and now we go back to pouring. Epoxy resin can be sanded and then polished, usually up to around 600 to 1000 grit, and then finished with polishing compounds. The final sandpaper grit depends on what kind of polishing compounds you are going to use. Another option is to sand it to around 400 or 600 grit and then pour a fresh layer of epoxy over the top. The effect will be almost the same. The surface will become glossy. Since we have an irregular, torn-looking edge, and polishing it would be extremely difficult, this time we decided not to polish it, but to flood coat it with epoxy. So we washed everything carefully and poured epoxy over the surface. For the final epoxy layer, it is important to add a little blue pigment. This helps prevent the resin from looking yellow if it starts to yellow slightly over time. We make it just a little bluish and pour it. Look here, we did not polish it at all. We simply sanded the surface, poured epoxy over it, and the result turned out quite good. But when we pour from the back side, small drops like this hang underneath. So we sand off these drops and then polish the whole surface. In the background, if you notice, there is another table with the same type of edge. We like this edge style, it looks very interesting. Now we need to do something with the backside. Pouring epoxy over the backside is no longer an option because then drops will form on the front side. So either we sand and polish it, which would take about 5 or 6 hours in total, or we sand it with 400 grit sandpaper and cover it with varnish. Since this is the backside, that is completely acceptable. In fact, this method can also be used on front surfaces, but we usually try not to do that there. On the backside though, why not? You can use matte varnish or glossy varnish. It fills the small pores and the surface turns out very nice. Now we move on to assembling the table bases. We will have 2 bases. The first one was designed in Fusion 360 and cut on a laser machine. We sent the files to the guys, and they cut the parts for us. These are the elements. The vertical legs slot into each other, so there are 2 main pieces. The bottom plate is 5 mm thick, and the top plate is 3 mm thick. Everything fits together like a construction kit and then gets welded. It is very convenient, not too expensive, very neat, and it looks good. This will be our first table base. For the second base, we will make a circle on one side, a semicircle on the other side, and use simple 20 mm round tubes. Alright, everything is painted. Now we start marking the tabletop. We mark where the outer diameter will be. After that, we mark the holes and screw in threaded inserts. The bolts will go into these inserts, so the base can be removed from the tabletop. Of course, you could fix it permanently with some screws or even pour epoxy over it. But we prefer to make the tabletop detachable from the base, and this operation can be repeated many times. For the second table, we poured 2 similar tabletops in general, not at the same time, but one after another. For this one, we made this type of base, a ring and a half ring, with the half ring attached directly to the tabletop. We welded on 20mm round tubes, and on top there is a large 5mm round mounting plate. So it is a slightly different design. We drill the holes, then countersink them so the bolt heads sit neatly inside. Here we are countersinking now, and then we will move on to fastening everything together. We wrap some electrical tape around the drill bit so we can see exactly how deep we need to drill. It has to be deep enough for the insert, but not too deep. We do not want to drill through our design or come out on the front side. Everything has to remain invisible, so we only need to drill into the dark layer and no deeper. We screw in these metal threaded inserts. Later, bolts can be screwed into them, and the base can be removed from the tabletop as many times as needed. Assembled and disassembled without damaging anything. This is the second tabletop. It is not sanded enough yet, and the edge has not been finished there, so now we sand it a little. With this tabletop, we will do the process in a slightly different order. The inserts do screw in by themselves, of course, but for extra reliability, we add a small drop of super glue inside and then screw them in with the glue. And these are the two tables we made. In my opinion, they turned out very nice. The pattern has a real sense of depth. It looks expensive. Beautiful.